now hear from the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman, I know we have the IG report that we should be receiving to give us more information, but I'm curious as to whether or not we can know if anyone has been fired or even reprimanded over the way the Madoff fiasco was mishandled.
Congressman, we're waiting, obviously, for the release of the Inspector General report, which has been quite comprehensive and quite extensive and is due to be released at the end of the summer. And based upon whatever's in that report, we'll have to make decisions about whether any kind of personnel actions are appropriate. We do not want to interfere in any way with the independent review of the Inspector General. I will say, though, that I have not wanted to wait for the Inspector General's report to make really extensive changes in the Securities and Exchange Commission, both in how we're organized.
I know we're going to make changes in the future, hopefully, but I think there should be some accountability for the people who did not do their jobs. And I think that we made the illustration before. If you report a bank robbery to the local police department and the bank robbery's going on for 10 years and they never walk over to the police department or to the bank to investigate the robbery, somebody ought to lose their job. Somebody ought to be reprimanded. And it's just incredible that hasn't happened yet, and that we have to wait to a report to take any action against the culpable negligence that cost people arguably $70 billion in losses because your agency would not take any action. Even after Barron's Magazine writes a feature story about this guy. I mean, it's worldwide news. The smart hedge fund managers and the money managers know to stay away from him, but gullible members of the public, are still lured in by this because he was allowed to continue doing business. I just would think that there should be some discipline taken for the employees that allowed that to happen.
Congressman, I think it's really critical that we have the full story of exactly what happened, and that's what the Inspector General has been charged with doing. There's not been separate inquiry down to the level of employee conduct because that investigation's going on, and no one is wanted, and myself included, to interfere in any way with that. But we're not just making changes in the future. We are making changes right now and have, over the last 6 months, made extensive changes at the SEC. We have a new enforcement director, a new deputy, a new head of the New York office. We have new technology.
But the question is, when employees don't do their job to protect the public, do we have to have an IG inspector to come in there and tell us if it's okay to fire people? I mean, wouldn't that be a normal management routine? If you have an employee who's incompetent or lazy or for whatever other reason doesn't do his job to protect the public, clearly like he should be doing, that we just don't fire those people? I mean, isn't there a policy in place to do that?
I believe deeply in holding employees accountable for their work. But I can't do that until I have the facts and the details about how they conducted their work and what the issues were, and that's what needs to wait for the Inspector General report.
But don't they have supervisors? Isn't there somebody in the organization that already, I mean, I know in any business, and I hate to, I know government doesn't have competition like a business, but any business where somebody made a business blunder that big, the whole department would be gone. Yeah, the senior management would be gone. Doesn't that happen anywhere in government? I mean, doesn't anybody have the authority to get rid of incompetent employees, people that refuse or for whatever reason don't do their jobs?
We do certainly have the ability to get rid of incompetent employees, but I have to have the evidence that shows me that employees were incompetent. I can't fire hundreds of people or tens of people without having a basis for doing that. And I don't have that basis at this point. That is the purpose, in part, of the Inspector General's report, to understand. It was asked for by my predecessor, Chairman Cox, to understand what went wrong, what did the SEC do, what did it fail to do, and where does the responsibility lie. And that's a necessary precondition, from my perspective, to taking any kind of personnel action.
And with all due respect, and I'm not aiming this at you, but I think the failure to know what went wrong and who is responsible for things go wrong is culpable negligence on the part of management.
I understand that concern, and there are things that we do know went wrong. We know that, for example, the agency receives 1.5 million tips a year and has no capability to really manage them or manage that process. So we have attacked that. We knew that we
Well,
had
but
gaps.
we know twice they blew off Markopolis. Even after Barron's Magazine did a big feature cover story on this fraud, I mean, anybody with a half a brain in the agency, that should have been plenty to know right there. I mean, this is not one of 1 million tips that got ignored. This guy took a big file down there. He was a qualified, experienced investigator. I'm talking about Markopolis. He took it down there and laid it in their hands, and they did nothing. He went back, they did nothing. It was exposed in Barron's, they did nothing. I mean, there is, I can't imagine any excuse. It's just a matter of finding out who all had a fingerprint on this thing and getting rid of them.
There is no question but that the agency did not appropriately follow up on the information that he gave them. I'm not defending that at all. And that's why we're in this process, and that's why we have devoted extraordinary resources both to the Inspector General's investigation, but also to filling all the gaps that we can, putting in place all the processes and procedures, and bringing in many senior new people to the agency to try to ensure that we can protect against this ever happening again. This is a tragedy of epic proportions. I fully appreciate that, and we're doing everything we can do.
When do we
fix it.
expect the IG's report?
I'm sorry?
When do we expect the IG?
The Inspector General has said that he would hope to release his report by the end of the summer.
Right. It's by September 30, Mr. Posey, and as soon as he does, we anticipate having a special session. Chairman. We have 5 votes